Back in the late 1980s, Patlabor was conceptualized and produced by Headgear Entertainment, though its development would be different from other anime franchises that would normally handle their IPs. The Patlabor manga would be written alongside the OVA series, being two separate entities. Eventually, there would be a Patlabor movie taking place after the OVA series. After the movie, there would be a television series that released not too soon after. And this one is completely separate from the OVA and manga. We would effectively have three different timelines in the Patlabor franchise. The first being the manga timeline, where all the events of the manga would take place. Then we'd have the OVA or movie timeline, where the events of the OVA and movies would occur. And then we'd have the on-television timeline, where the events of On Television, The New Files, and eventually Easy Y would take place. This makes the continuity of Patlabor slightly complicated, and it makes one wonder if the events of each timeline could theoretically take place within each other. So, I present to you my idea for a term we could coin for this concept, the PCU. Not the Patlabor Cinematic Universe, but the Patlabor Composite Universe. This essentially would be the timeline where all the events take place in one singular universe, disregarding all possible inconsistencies as well. Though, on the topic of timelines, why not go over the general overall timeline of Patlabor as a whole? While thinking up of a way to merge all Patlabor timelines, I looked into the idea of a timeline for the general Patlabor universe. If you're more interested in compositing the timelines of Patlabor, then skip to this timestamp. Otherwise, here is the timeline of Patlabor as a whole. This will be known as the Grand Timeline, the entire timeline of the Patlabor universe, not necessarily focused on the events and happenings of Special Vehicle Section 2, of course. In the beginning, World War II was coming to a close, and Yutaka Shinohara would found Shinohara Heavy Industries. At the time, they'd just be supplying vehicle parts to occupational forces. Later in the 1950s, the research would be in full swing for neural networking systems, studying artificial intelligence through trial and error type learning. Sometime later in the 1960s, the US Army would fund the creation of a quadrupedal walking truck, developed by the General Electric Company. Its development involved the transmission of human limb movement to robotic limb movement. You could say it's the first labor, quote-unquote, but we'll see. In the late 60s, Masahiro Mori and the others at the Tokyo Institute of Technology would create the first autonomous six-legged walking robot, which would go up and down stairs. This would be dubbed Gerwalk. In the 1970s, Ichiro Kato and the others at the Waseda University would create a robot that could walk upright on two legs, the first intelligent robot known as the Wabot Unit 1. Meanwhile, the Shaft Group is founded amidst the shift in production from heavy industrial equipment to more electronic equipment, using this as a basis for their newly founded company. There would also be the establishment of Heishi Heavy Industries, although Heishi would only be a heavy industry division of a greater company called the Shiryo Zaibatsu Group. The 70s would continue to see the rise and development of possible work robots. Shinohara Heavy Industries, for instance, would contribute by creating robots for outdoor work such as mountain surveys and forestry. In the 1980s, the Ministry of International Trade showed interest in the idea of extreme work robots, proposing an idea of a robot with 4 legs, 2 arms, and a high-performance computer actuator. Shinohara Heavy Industries and Heishi would hop on this project, though the development was more along the lines of waiting to see what would happen. Kazuma Shinohara would also be granted the position of president in Shinohara Heavy Industries in the 1980s as well. In 1986, Shaft Enterprises would be officially established, with its head office being located in Tokyo, Japan. It would go on to be a large multinational corporation with locations in Asia, America, and Europe. It'd be so big that divisions in each company would be considered their own entities. It would manufacture everything from toothpicks to space shuttles. Later in the 1980s, a mobile weapons platform known as the RT-99 Baruke would be developed by the Soviet Union during the Cold War. Its maneuverability and weaponry allowed it to fight against cable cars and other infantry weaponry. Apparently, it could also function as a cable car. In 1988, a supercomputer known as the Earth Simulator was created, which specialized in climate change simulation. After the results were distributed, Japan would take measures to deal with the oncoming climate change. The Phoenix Project, a landfill project, would be named the Neo-Phoenix Project to combat global warming and rising sea levels. Sometime in the early 1990s, the Suge School would be founded to explore the idea of the militarization of labors. 1992 rolls around, and Shinohara Heavy Industries released the first conventional commercialized labor, the SIR-90 Labor 90. Despite being the first Labor with an operating system, it suffered from a myriad of issues, like short operating times, steering stability, and a very inconvenient power source, and frequent system crashes. Despite all this groundwork, the future of Labors looked grim, and the industry considered moving on from this new possible era of engineering. However, in 1995, a powerful earthquake known as the Tokyo Bay earthquake would hit, causing the deaths of 4,000 Japanese citizens and destroying over 100,000 homes, causing over 15 trillion yen in damages. Because of the magnitude of such an event, the Japanese decided to start a great reconstruction effort to pick back up after this earthquake. The demand for labor skyrocketed, as their power and resilience could assist in the new land reclamation efforts of the New Babylon project, and the Neo Phoenix project will be assimilated into it as well. What came the great and monumental use of labors came labor crime as well, and to combat this, the Metropolitan Police Department would create Special Vehicles Section 2 in 1996, a labor division of the police department that could handle labor crime, deal with terrorists, suppress riots, and help in times of crisis. In 1998, going up until the year 2000, Special Vehicles Section 2 Division 2 would be involved in numerous incidents such as the Brocken attacks, the collapse of the Ark, the Phantom, and the Wasted 13 incident, and most notably, the Black Labor incident. The Black Labor, otherwise known as the Griffin, would be notorious for its crimes and acts of violence, redefining labor crime for years to come. In 1999, Yukihito Suge would be involved in a military operation in Southeast Asia, which he and his team would be unable to return fire to the enemy. This would inspire his various accounts of domestic terrorism across Tokyo in the year 2002. This, of course, was in criticism of Japan's isolationist policy and avoidant nature regarding foreign affairs. He would then be apprehended by the former members of Special Vehicles Section 2 Division 2. In the 2010s, the Babylon project would be completed, yet it put an economic recession on Japan's economy. Labor production would slow to a crawl, and the first division of Special Vehicles Section 2 would be dissolved. Division 2 would struggle to maintain its existence in this new era. And in the 2020s is when Palaver EZY would take place. We still don't know exactly what's going to happen and how the world of Palaver will change, but hopefully it's much better than the movie timeline. Anyways, that was pretty much a slightly abridged overview of the grand timeline. Now, let's get into the SV2 focused direct composite timeline, both of which obviously take from all the different timelines of the Palaver franchise. With that being said, let's take a look. It's the summer of 1998, and the newest members of Special Vehicles Section 2 arrive to establish the new Division 2. Around the same time, they'd get a hold of Shinohara Heavy Industries' new labor, the AV-98 Ingram. It'd be revolutionary as one of the first laborers to actually move almost like a human. Early on in their career, they'd be stopping petty labor crime, or trying to get to the bottom of any situation they'd get themselves into. Eventually, Division 2 would be the target of recurring Brocken attacks in Tokyo, each stronger than the last in an effort to collect data. Division 1 would also be proposed the SRX-70 Saturn, a new Toyohata-made labor to replace the outdated Pythons Division 1 used. Despite being promising, the police would turn it down due to suspicion of data collection. Later down the line, sometime in the fall, Hiroteru Kai would initiate a coup d'etat on Tokyo, stealing a nuclear missile from a US military base and almost using it on Tokyo if not for Division 2's intervention. In the wintertime, the Brocken attacks would culminate into the Phantom, a new labor created by Shaft Enterprises that could fire beams of energy from its false eyes. They'll be assisted by another gang of Brockens, targeting Division 2 for, you guessed it, data collection. After its defeat, it will return one last time, this time assisted by the Saturn. Division 2 would then defeat the Phantom one final time, bringing an end to Shaft's data collection saga. February of 1999, the Tokyo Labor Show would commence, featuring Shinohara Heavy Industries' new Economy Ingram, a cost-effective pat labor that's just as efficient as the Ingram. Unfortunately, an unplanned field test, thanks to a mysterious black laborer, would cast doubts on its capabilities. After its appearance, it would take off into the air, being the first labor that could actually fly. Despite the efforts of Shaft security systems and the police, the Griffin and its pilot will escape again. In the summer of 1999, Shinohara Heavy Industries would create a new patrol labor known as the Type 0. To go along with it, Haas would be developed by Aichi Hoba that increased the productivity of any labor by 30%. It would then be discovered that at certain frequencies, the labor would start acting strangely on its own, destroying all infrastructure around it. Division 2 would figure this out and realize that a large manufacturing complex offshore called the Ark would intensify these frequencies, causing laborers all across the Bay Area to go rogue. After storming the Ark, they successfully destroy it, preventing the massive destruction that would have ensued. Not too long after, a mysterious creature would be found lurking in the depths of Tokyo Bay. Grown and created by a woman who had lost her daughter to cancer. The police would frequently encounter this monster as two detectives try to get to the bottom of the mysterious destruction of laborers in certain areas. The monster known as 13 would finally be confronted by the police, who would break down a cellular structure with a warhead. Later in the year, the Peacemakers would be deployed to Division 1 of Section 2, replacing the Pythons entirely. They'd make use of a neural networking system that allowed the labor itself to actively make decisions while the pilot focuses on combat. In the last days of December, the Peacemaker units will be destroyed by the Griffin that is now equipped with an Aqua unit. The Griffin will be fighting against the police in order for Planning Section 7 to auction off their development team, using its battles as demonstrations. On New Year's Eve, Division 2 would once again try to apprehend the Griffin once and for all. In the springtime of the year 2000, SB2 would encounter the Griffin once more after dispatching to apprehend a modified labor. The commotion of the Griffin was putting too much heat on Shaft Planning Section 7 as they struggled to keep possession of it. Bud would then be in the custody of the police as he ran away, fearing that Kurosaki had plans to get rid of him once they were done with the Griffin. Utsumi would come back for Bud, leading a final confrontation at the reclaimed land, and the Griffin would be defeated once and for all. At some point in time, members of Division 2 would have gone their separate ways, though coming back for one last get-together to apprehend Yuki Tsuge, who has been instigating infighting in the JSTF and causing several acts of terrorism. After a long standoff between the two Ixtals in the old AV-98s, they emerge victorious and arrest Tsuge. Now, that was a lot, wasn't it? Probably the most eventful 4 or 5 years for these characters. I didn't go too super into detail, but I went off of what I knew and what I saw. I did my best to use known dates as well as focusing on the weather and what clothing the characters were wearing. Again, this is an amalgamation of all the timeline, so it doesn't make complete sense, just what I could fit in there anyways. Either way, I had fun with this video idea and I'm glad I could finally get it out. If you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, and comment down below with your thoughts. With that being said, thank you for watching and I'll be seeing you.